guys, Chris here with Super Savvy Travelers. Hey, today I wanted to go over an unfortunate incident that happened to us in Tampa as we were boarding a plane to Italy. And I did a video on what happened, but we also filed a complaint with the airline, and the complaint came back, or the response came back. And of course they found they did nothing wrong and, whatnot. So, and I will add that I have never once seen any company investigate themselves and find any sort of culpability at all. So basically it was just gaslighting, in my opinion. What happened was we had arrived about 4 hours early for our flight out of Tampa to Rome. And this was through Delta Airlines and KLM partnered together. So we were sitting in the boarding area for about 3 hours with Gigi. Gigi was perfect. She was fine. She wasn't barking. She wasn't running around. She wasn't doing anything. So finally, when they call for boarding, I get in the boarding line and Gigi's with me and I'm holding the P pad. Now the P pad is what we put on the relief attestation form to say how we're going to handle her pee on the flight, because it's like a 10-hour flight, 9-10-hour flight. So I'm holding the P pad. And this woman comes up to me from the gate, and I think she worked for KLM, can't be sure, but she was with the airline. And she said, you can't board. Your dog is not properly trained. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I said, what exactly is she doing that is not properly trained? Oh, well, you got a diaper in your hand. I go, this is not a diaper. This is a pee pad. Yeah, well, and she sniffed that man's trouser. I said, we're standing in line right next to the man. She sniffed his trouser leg. Big deal. That's not disruptive. The man turned around and smiled, So I'm going, okay, this is just weird. Why all of a sudden? So she goes, come over to the desk. So we go over to the desk and she goes, well, I was on the tram with you. And I saw her barking at people. And I said, you weren't on the tram with us. We were on the tram 3 hours earlier, because that's when we arrived, or 3+ hours earlier. There was like 3 people on the tram and none of them were you. And she didn't bark on the tram. So that's not true. So I don't know where that came from or why she brought that out. And then she said, yeah, well, we don't have your form. And I said, we filed it online. Well, I can't find it. Okay, great. We had printed forms. Here's our printed form. She looks at the form and she goes, you can't sign your own form as trainer. I said, I can. It's clear under the ADA and ACAA guidelines that I can. It is specifically indicated that I can, and that the dog has to be under my control, which she is, and not disruptive, which she is not. So then she's losing the argument. She turns me over to the other agent who clearly has no idea what to do. So then I explained to the other agent, per the guidelines, look, I can train my own dog. Here's the guidelines. I showed it to her on my phone. She misreads it and says, oh, it says you can't. I said, no, read it again. I can. Oh, okay. Well, I don't know about that. I'm going to call my manager. So she tries to call her manager and she's still trying to pick apart my argument at that time. So then she's trying to get a hold of her manager and the person's not available. And later I found out that you're supposed to speak with a complaints resolution officer or official who is supposed to be there at all times, at the ready, anytime there's any sort of a dispute. And that wasn't offered to me. She didn't even know about it. I mean, basically these people, first of all, the initial lady, I don't know what her motivation was. Obviously it was to try to keep us from boarding. And secondly, the other lady was completely untrained, which is too bad, because I really got that she was in a situation she didn't want to be in and was trying to get a manager or somebody to help bail her out of this horrible situation. So they were getting ready to close the doors. All our luggage is on board. Everything we had was on board except us and our dog. So I turned to Pete and I said, you know what? If we don't get on this flight, we're so going to expletive sue. And I said it loud enough for her to hear. And she put the phone down. She walked behind this other lady and she boarded us herself. Now, I will say that Gigi was perfect on board. In fact, everybody loved her. We've gotten so many comments. She's flown, I didn't even, for years without incident. And everybody always says, oh, your service dog, we didn't even know she was there. And when we got to our layover, the KLM employees were very nice. They couldn't find the forms either, but they accepted our printed forms. And then they looked harder, and guess what? They found them. So there was just this one person who decided for whatever reason she was going to refuse to board us at the very last minute and was bringing out all kinds of arguments where it clearly violates these particular guidelines. So my question to Delta and KLM, whoever it was, whatever airline was in charge of this person, is this how you want to treat your disabled passengers? because a lot of elderly people are disabled. A lot of them have service dogs, and a lot of them travel because they have the time and the money to do it. So you might want to train your people a whole lot better than they're trained right now. And make sure that your disabled passengers are not put through the stress and upset that we were put through at the very last minute after waiting 4 hours to board our flight. There you go, guys. Just FYI.